guys, I'm Dr. Bawa and I'm a podiatrist that has over 10 years of experience treating patients, and in this video we're going to talk about 5 things that you may be doing wrong with your feet that could be causing injuries, loss of balance, and generalized pain in your feet. And I'm also going to go over remedies on what can help with these issues to prevent falls and preventing injuries in general. So the first thing that I often see that patients will do incorrectly without even knowing is wearing the wrong shoes. 72% of people in the entire world actually wear shoes that are either too small or too big for their feet. And as you can imagine, this causes a lot of issues, especially when walking, because it can result in like blister formation, it can result in falls and all kinds of injuries, which is why, in people who are diabetic, we really kind of emphasize like proper shoe gear and things like that so that they're not, falling or getting ulcers and injuring themselves. So a lot of times when you wear shoes, people will often ask me, well, what kind of shoes should I buy? And honestly, everyone's foot structure is a little bit different. And I always tell patients, if you don't know where to start, the first thing you could do is to go to an actual shoe store. So when you go to an actual shoe store, one thing you'll want to do is to make sure to go at the end of the day. When you go to a shoe store, your legs in general, for most people, will be the most swollen, your legs and feet. So that's a good time to go to the shoe store, because then they can get an accurate measurement of your feet so that, when you go to the store, they'll actually measure the length of your feet and the width of your feet. And that way, they'll kind of like pick the shoe size based on that. And when you go, when your foot's just a little bit swollen, you won't fall, in the trap of like getting shoes that feel right at the shoe store, but then you go home and try to wear them several days later, and then all of a sudden they just feel too tight. I always tell my patients, if the shoes are just a little bit loose, I can always make them tighter. But when the shoes are just too tight, sometimes we can stretch out the shoes, but it can be a little bit harder to kind of make it a little bit looser and more comfortable. So oftentimes when picking shoes, I always tell patients, it's not that you have to get like a specific running shoe or something like that all the time. It depends on the foot deformity, obviously. But when you're picking shoes, you want to make sure that the bottom of the shoe is actually hard. We call that the sole of the shoe. That, helps to prevent like shock from going through the foot. We call it shock absorption. And you want the bottom of the shoe to be hard. I know there's a lot out there about barefoot walking and barefoot running, but I like and prefer that people's feet have some type of support when they're walking. So the bottom of the shoe, you want to make sure that it's nice and hard. You should be able to flex the shoe a lot of times like in the toe box area, but you don't want any like give or flexibility like in the middle of the shoe, especially if it's if it has too much flexibility. A lot of times it can mean that the shoe might not have as much support. And there's a lot of different kinds of shoes. Like I said, if you go to an actual shoe store, you can ensure that you get the right size. And oftentimes too, they'll give recommendations on the shoes that would be best suited for you. And another bonus tip would be to, if you've already seen a foot doctor or you have bought a pair of inserts, make sure to take that with you to the shoe store, because then you can try them on in your shoes. Inserts tend to change how you walk. So if you are wearing inserts, you definitely want to be consistent and continue to wear them. So you'll want to make sure that they fit into your shoes well. And that way, when you're walking, you're not going to have issues with like tripping or falling, and you'll already be used to wearing them regularly in your shoes. Now, the type of shoe you get is obviously going to depend on what you're looking for. A lot of times when people are looking for boots, they need something that's sturdy. A lot of people might need to wear steel-toe boots for their jobs. Now, some people, if they have to wear heels and they have issues with like their toes, like hammer toes, like when the toes are bent and the heels, have like kind of like a shallow toe box, they might need to get a shoe that can accommodate that by purchasing a shoe that has more room and wiggle room for the toes so that there's no compression. Some people have bunion deformities, and that can sometimes cause a little bit of pain and also issues with balance depending on how bad the bunion is, and they'll need to get like a wider shoe to be able to accommodate that. So like I said, there's so many different kinds of shoes that would do well for a lot of different people, but it's just best when you're not sure, instead of just getting them directly from online, to actually go to a shoe store. And then once you find out what kind of shoe works for you, then you can always like shop online and get something similar in the future. That would be my advice. And the second mistake that people often make that can result in injuries or balance issues is not taking care of leg swelling. So there's something called venous insufficiency, which is basically, as we get older, and in some people it's genetic, the valves inside the veins don't work as well. The veins have difficulty kind of pumping blood back up to the heart. So what happens is that you get pooling and swelling in the legs. And oftentimes, you'll notice that a lot of patients who are sitting in wheelchairs have a little bit more swelling in their their legs, and that's because the legs are kind of hanging down. We call it in a dependent position, meaning that their legs aren't propped up. So what happens is that their legs get swollen, and the problem with that is, besides being heavy and uncomfortable and causing you to have to like go up a shoe size, or like, you know, putting you at risk for falls and things like that, is that when you have a lot of swelling in your legs, you're at risk for developing water blisters, and the skin, it's almost like it, you know, like the whole leg will get stretched out, and the skin will kind of get stretched out as well, like a balloon. So if you were to like bump something with your leg, like even a walker, you know, it can result in like a leg ulcer. And oftentimes people, you know, don't just have issues with their veins, they have issues with their arteries in the legs too, which can cause issues with healing. And a lot of people have painful leg sores, you know, that can kind of increase their risk for falls. So that's something to always be careful about. How can you prevent that though? You know, one of the things that I'm sure a lot of you have heard of is wearing compression socks. Now, compression stockings, hear me out. I know that they're very hard to get on and they feel very tight, and sometimes, you know, patients will complain that they can feel uncomfortable too. But compression socks are very effective in helping to reduce swelling in the legs. Even if you wore them for a few hours a day, you'd notice a big, you know, difference with like the amount of swelling you have in your legs. They've done studies to show that people who don't even have swelling in their legs, when they wear compression socks, their legs feel better at the end of the day. Compression socks, a lot of times you'd be better off going to like a medical equipment store. Sometimes the insurance can cover them, but they come in different strengths, and usually the low grade strength is tight enough for most people. The strength is 15 to 20 millimeter mercury, and you can also get these online too. I prefer medical supply store a lot of times because sometimes your insurance may cover it, and also they'll measure your legs to make sure that you're getting the right size and strength. But if you're on a budget, you can certainly get it on Amazon, and I'll go ahead and put a link in the description on the ones that I recommend. But wearing compression socks during the day and then taking them off in the evening when you're about to go to bed and your legs are up, you'll notice a big difference. Swelling in your legs and your feet will go down quite a bit. And what's nice about compression socks is that one pair of socks are good for 6 months of compression. So you can buy a pair and then wash it and reuse it, and because they're good for 6 months as far as helping to reduce that swelling. Now, if you've tried getting compression socks on in the past and it was always like a struggle for you because of how hard it is to get on and how tight it is, which is understandable, sometimes I'll recommend that patients get ones that are easier to apply, like compression socks with zippers, and I'll put that in the description too. You can actually zip it on so it's easier for people to get on, especially for patients who have diabetes or, you know, like numbness and, you know, things like that in their fingers that make it more difficult to get the socks on. You can get the ones on with the zipper. It might not be as tight, but it's still better than nothing. Now, the third thing that if you ignore can cause issues with balance and also increase your risk for injuries is subtle foot pain. So a lot of times, you know, when you have that achiness in the foot, especially like if you notice a little bit of subtle swelling with sudden pain, oftentimes people will kind of walk through that discomfort and walk through the ache, wait a few weeks before the pain gets so severe that, you know, by the time they get into the doctor, they can barely even walk. I always tell patients, like, if you're feeling like pain, even if you've never had an injury and it's been ongoing for a few days and you've tried to rest it and it still hurts, you need to make an appointment with the foot doctor to get an x-ray and to get it checked out. Because a lot of times people have certain foot structures, whether you have flat feet, whether you have a high arched foot, whether you have a foot where you tend to wear the outsides of your shoes, you know, a lot of times certain foot structures can cause repetitive pressure to be placed on certain parts of the foot, like in the front area of the foot and the ball of the foot. Because a lot of us have tight calf muscles in general, you know, that can cause excess pressure in the ball of the foot. And a lot of times when people do a lot of activities, like, you know, if you're training for like a 5K and you start like increasing your activities more in a short period of time, or you just do too much, they'll kind of start to notice like subtle pain and swelling in the ball of the foot, and it might just be ignored for a while because you're like, I think it'll get better, and you kind of like work through it, but then it ends up being a stress fracture. So if you were to fall and trip and break your foot, that would be an acute fracture. But sometimes because of our foot structure, we tend to put more pressure in certain areas of our feet, and if you do too much too soon, especially if you're training for like a 5K or you just start increasing your activity more, or your job requires that, you know, repetitive stress in one spot of the foot can result in a stress fracture. That's where it gets its name. And the problem with the stress fracture, like I said, you know, it kind of takes a while for people to notice that there's something wrong wrong. And also stress fractures often show up late on the x-ray. You know, there usually can be a delay of a few weeks before we can even see a stress fracture on x-ray. But the problem is when you actually crack the bone and it breaks, it takes a good 6 to 8 weeks to heal. So if you were going to attend an event, or if you were excited about, you know, running like a 5K or 10K or something, you wouldn't be able to do it, right? You'd have to like be in like a boot for a good 6 weeks. So I always tell patients, like, even if you notice a little bit of pain or swelling in an area that's just kind of constant, you should definitely go see your foot doctor so that you can get an x-ray and they can tell you if there's anything wrong. And even if there's no broken bone, you know, oftentimes what we'll do is we'll recommend, you know, taking pressure away from that spot with specific inserts, or even with like some padding or something like that, so that you don't get injured and you don't get falls in the future. So the fourth thing that a lot of patients will do that can increase your risk for falls and for balance issues is ignoring neuropathy. So oftentimes with neuropathy, that's when you feel numbness or tingling or burning sensations in the feet. And I can't tell you how many people notice it and they kind of just like put it to the side and ignore it for a little bit until it gets to that point where it really starts to either become painful or affect balance. The problem with neuropathy is that it can manifest in so many different ways. Some patients just feel like a numbness in their feet. Some people feel pain with burning, shooting, and tingling sensations. And some people also experience balance issues, and that can be a problem because it oftentimes results in falls. Now, with painful neuropathy, we can treat it with creams and patches and medications. Oftentimes though, when you have numbness and balance issues, it's kind of hard to reverse that, but there's things that can help with the balance issues, like physical therapy to help improve, you know, your balance and also your muscle strength. And we call it gait training when it, you know, kind of helps you to like start walking appropriately again, and it decreases your risk for falls. But not only that, a lot of times we can help reduce the risk of falls by making sure that you're wearing the right shoes. You know, a lot of times wearing shoes like high top shoes can help because it provides like your ankle with a little bit of more stability than just say like a normal athletic shoe. And oftentimes inserts, especially custom inserts, can help because they're custom made to your feet and they last a long time and they give your feet the support that they need. And sometimes too, if the neuropathy is getting worse and it's going up the legs, you know, it could be like a bigger issue, like a nerve impingement higher up, or even things like MS, like multiple sclerosis, or other conditions that can cause nerve issues in the legs and feet. So it's always important to get it checked out, even if it's just a little bit of numbness and tingling, so that you prevent these injuries moving forward in the future. And the fifth mistake that people will make that can result in injuries and falls is not wearing the right inserts. So all of my patients know that whenever I recommend inserts, it's because, you know, I specifically am recommending it for a reason. You know, a lot of people need inserts when they suffer from foot deformities, like flat feet that actually hurt, and or high arched feet that cause excess pressure in the ball of the foot or in the heel area. Not everyone needs inserts. You know, I always tell people there's got to be a reason that you're getting them. Sometimes, you know, people have a little bit of flat feet, but they have no pain and they wear good shoes, and that's good enough. But when you have pain and you have issues when you're walking as a result of your foot structure, that's a good time to get inserts. I'm very picky with the types of inserts I recommend, and I only like a few different brands. And PowerStep is a good brand if you're looking for over-the-counter. I'm not sponsored by them, and I'll put a link in the description for each foot structure and what kind of PowerStep insert you can buy. Usually they're pretty cheap. They're on Amazon. 90% of my patients, I would say, love them. You know, they can help for things like arch pain, heel pain associated with plantar fasciitis, and also if you have pain in the ball of the foot, they have inserts for that too. So I'll definitely link that in the description if you guys want to get that. Sometimes though, people have like specific, you know, deformities in the feet, like really severe bunions or like hammer toes, or like just unique feet in general because they've had like a lot of different kinds of surgery. In those cases, usually I'll recommend a custom made insert. They tend to be a little bit pricier because, you know, we have to take a mold of your feet and make an insert that's designed for your feet, but they also usually will last much, much longer, and also they're custom made. So if you think of like glasses and contacts, you know, they're custom made for you, and same thing with the inserts. And the thing with inserts is that they literally change how you walk. So once you start wearing them, you definitely want to be consistent with wearing them in all of your shoes. So usually you would take out the inserts and move them from shoe shoe to shoe if possible. There are specific types of inserts for like tennis shoes, and then sometimes, I'll recommend dress shoe inserts too, but most inserts that we recommend are meant for athletic shoes. If you're not getting inserts and you want an arch support, you can also get sandals that have arch supports in them. Specific brands are Birkenstock, UFOs, and Bionics. I'll put that in the description as well. And those sandals can help with arch support. But if you don't, address the foot pain and the issues that you have, the shoes can only go so far, and a lot of times you need inserts to kind of stabilize the foot, reduce pain, take discomfort away from the pressure areas that you're experiencing, and just help improve overall how you're walking. But like I said, not everyone needs it, but when you do need an insert, it's a good idea to start to kind of get used to wearing them to prevent future injuries from happening. And that's a big mistake that a lot of people make, and they'll tell me, I wish I got inserts like years ago, or else I probably wouldn't have this problem. But you only learn, if somebody tells you, right? I mean, there's only so much you can find out yourself, and like I said, not everyone needs it, so it can sometimes be confusing, but that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you guys continue walking. I'm here to give you real advice. Best thing we can do together is to continue walking, pain-free long-term, and I think that as long as you follow these tips, you'll be a little bit better off about preventing injuries and also preventing falls and things like that. If you guys enjoyed this content, make sure to subscribe for more videos just like this one.